Hello. Today we are going to cover something that I get asked sometimes, or I've heard other accountants and bookkeepers get asked. Things like, what is that weird idea called a general ledger? Why is there a thing called a chart of accounts? And can someone please explain to me what a P&L is? But last of all, how does anything of this craziness apply to my business? So today we're going to start with a P&L because that's the big picture. I know when I'm learning something new, I want to know what the end result is. Why do we have to all learn all the little tiny steps? What is that big picture? So we're going to start with the P&L. Now the P&L is also called a profit and loss. It's also called an income statement, and it's a very basic, normal thing that accountants and bookkeepers look at, business professionals see. It's it's just the generic form that you can look at to see how your business is functioning. Those forms can be created very much detail. They can be very small. There are many things that can be done with a P&L. You could also create a different form. Some people create forms called a dashboard, so it's easier to read. It has more pictures and it's more fun. It's not just a list of numbers. But today we're going to look at the P&L and start from there and then work our way backwards and explaining how some of this works and why it might be important for your business. So let's go ahead and transition over here. Now I'm using QuickBooks today to explain a P&L. Any good accounting software will have this function, and for example, I'm certified in Xero. That works as well. I've just looked at some other forms like the Wave app. They also have a P&L. Most accounting softwares have P&L. So if you look quickly at here, if we make it the smallest detail that we can, there are not many sections on a profit and loss. It may make it look a little less scary this way. So you have income. That's all ways that that your business brings money into the business. Your cost of goods sold are things you have purchased that is then going to create a product at the end. So for this is a landscaping company, they could have purchased things like pumps for a fountain or plants for the landscaping. They may have used different ways they feel built that project, and then they would sell it. Okay? Then we look at our expenses. So expenses can be anything that the business spends money on, from rent to electricity to paying your employees. All of those things would be counted under expenses. So if you'll look at the information up here at the first, you've got income minus your cost of goods sold, right? Because those were actually expenses that were expensed out that will then create an income for your business. So if you do income minus cost of goods sold, you actually get what your true profit was for that time period. Now you can change the time period by month, by year, by week, whatever you're looking for. Okay, and then we have our expenses. So we take our income, our gross profit, minus our expenses, and we get total income for the business for that period. Now sometimes people use a different form of categorization called other expenses. Now when I use this section, it is for things that I need to ask my clients about. If I saw an expense come in and I have no idea what it is, I usually put it under other expenses, and then later we may categorize it up to a different category. However, if some people use this just as random expense because they didn't know where else to put it, so it might be in here. So you may have this category down here, other expenses, and you may not. It's just basically another expense. So you could add, for example, expenses and other expenses. That would get your total expenses for the business. The way this financial statement reads is you take your net income, net operating income, minus those other expenses, and here it has a total net other expenses, and then you get your true income for that time period. So it may look like you made $10,000 in that time period, but by the time you take all the expenses out, you really only made $1,900. So this is why it's important for business for you to look at, hey, where's the income? Where's the expenses? What is really my net for that time period? Now, if you take this information, and as you can see, you can detail it out, different types of incomes that your business can get. You can have different types of cost of goods sold. You can have different types of expenses. See, as you can see, there's a giant list of expenses. So we are going to look at how we get there. How do we get all the information to this form so that it helps our business grow? So this all comes off of your chart of accounts. So we will look at some examples here. Okay, for examples, we're going to scroll down here, job expenses, and then under that they have job materials, and they have deck and patio expenses. Okay, so these are different ways that you can categorize your expenses. So to create this list, you actually have to create a chart of accounts. And in the chart of accounts, there are a lot of things. This is how you build the foundation of your financial statements and your books. And the chart of accounts is how everything is tied together, from your data entry part to the creating the report part, so that you can then have management meetings and make decisions based on this information for your business. Okay, so if you'll look on here, chart of accounts has many things. You will categorize it as income and expenses, and we're going to scroll down here to the job expenses that I just showed you. Okay, so we have job expenses, right, and all those subcategories. So if you look job expenses, then they have cost of labor, and then a subcategory installation, right? So everything in this line, cost of labor, that's a subcategory job expense. Okay, so we're going to flip back over here to profit and loss, and your job expenses that they have listed is they don't have all of it, they just have the materials. So if we look at chart of accounts again, quick over here, we're going to scroll down to the job material section. See, here's all these things listed, and as you see, there are sub-accounts. So when you look at your profit and loss, these sub-accounts are indented and they give you subtotals. So you could hide the detail if you wanted. If you didn't want all that, that gives you that subtotal job materials and then a subtotal of job expenses. Okay, if I haven't lost you yet, we'll keep on going. All right, so then the next question is, how do we get those numbers in there? Okay, we've built the foundation. We've got the end result, the report, and we've got the beginning result of creating a chart of accounts. How do we get the expenses in there? So to do that, we would have to go and create an expense. Now there's many ways to create an expense. You can write a check, you can do expenses, you can pull in bank statements, all of those things. And to get an actual detail of how to do this, you'd have to see another video. I'm not doing all the detail on this today. I just want to connect you from the chart of accounts to the financial statements. Okay? So to create an expense down here, at least in QuickBooks, other software may be a little bit different. You have the category. So chart of accounts and category are the same in this system, and it will bring up, when you click the drop down, it will bring up all of these things. So you'll see job expenses, that's an expense, all the subcategories we had created on the chart of accounts system, and all the other subcategories. Okay, so on this one, just for fun, we are going to create an expense under the plants, just so we can follow this process through. We're going to do a whole lot of zeros, so it'll jump out at us in a minute when I go there. Okay, so I've not saved it yet, so we're going to go back over here real quick. Profit and loss, our plants and soils, we're at $300. Okay, once we save this expense, okay, that was for today's date in case we were paying attention, and you will notice up here our date goes through today's date. So we are going to refresh this report, and so then if we scroll down here to our expenses, plants and expenses, you see that $100,000 is on there. I really hope they don't spend $100,000 on one project, but I was doing the large number so you can follow that through from expense all the way to report. Now, if you look at this and all of a sudden you freak out and you're like, why do I have that much money? On here, you can click on that number. That number will then give you a drill down information of what all those expenses were. So as you can tell, they have had several different expenses over the last few months. And here's the one we just created for the $100,000. Okay, so that's a good way for you to check and look and make sure things were entered correctly. They weren't put in the wrong account. They shouldn't have been income or some other system, some other account for you. All right. So the last tiny step we're going to take, and again, I hope I haven't lost you. It's not become too overwhelming, but the last tiny step we're going to take is called a balance sheet. Now, balance sheet is also tied to your chart of accounts, but it's a different type of account. It includes your assets and liabilities, and that may sound like a crazy word, but an asset basically is things that you own. So, for example, your bank account would be an asset. So when I created this expense, and we'll go back here and look at this expense real quick. All right, when I created this expense, I also had it that we paid that out of checking. So if we go over here to our balance sheet, we have checking accounts, okay? And it will give us the ending balance of that checking account. Evidently, he had more than $1,000 or $100,000 in there. Let's see. We are going to run the report again, refresh it, see what happens. No, he didn't. He only had that $1,200. Then I took $100,000 out of there. His checking account went below its balance. That's not good. So when you look at a balance sheet and you see a number like that and you click on it, it will also give you basically your check register, which there are other ways to look at that in the system, but it will show you all the activity that has happened. And again, at the very bottom is this expense that's $100,000. So that will show you, okay, maybe I miswrote that check. Maybe it should have only been $1,000 instead of $100,000, and then you can go back and fix that information. All right, so there's our quick overview of our balance sheet, chart of accounts, profit and loss statement, and I hope that was helpful for everyone today, and maybe that put some of those pieces together for you to help you when you put the information in the beginning, whether they're receipts or whether they're checks that you're depositing. It will help combine all that information so you know where that information comes from, so you can make better decisions, make budgets and plans for the future. Thanks for watching.